Hello everyone and welcome back to Dutiful Future. That's right, we have another podcast today. I know it's been a while, but hey, here we are. Joining me today is the self-described demon of lefty politics, the fire and brimstone brand debate streamer herself, demonmama. I'm doing this intro the day after the podcast, as this was recorded live on demonmama's stream. I would like to say thank you so much for having me. I had a fantastic time. All the links to demonmama's channel will be in the description. I would highly recommend checking them out. As for the podcast, this is all going to be about sort of the journey of demonmama, from religious culthood to Twitch politics and debating. There will be timestamps in the description if you want to sort of jump around. And I'd just like to say a quick thank you to everyone from demonmama's community who came from the live stream and came to subscribe to my channel. I got a pretty big boost, so that was amazing. I really appreciate it. I'm very close to 1,000 subscribers, so if you're here and you haven't subscribed yet, why don't you consider doing it? It would be great to hit 1,000. I'd really appreciate it, and it would be pretty cool in general. Yeah, thanks to everyone in demonmama's community for being really nice to me. There was lots of nice stuff that I saw in the chat, and I really appreciated it. It was nice to be received so warmly and so welcomely. But without further ado, let's jump straight in. Please enjoy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for having me. It's very kind of you. I've been really looking forward to talking with you.
Well, that's fantastic. This is my first ever time on a live stream, so I've heard it can only go well, and everyone's very nice all the time.
True.
So that's good.
Nothing ever goes wrong in live streams ever. There's never technical issues. There's nothing. We are the smoothest, most reliable people, streamers. Literally, definitely not famous for being, running everything with paper clips and bubble gum. But yeah,
I've never heard of a page which has something to do with live streams and failing in some sort. That's not a real thing. There's live stream successes, and they're the best.
That's the only one. Streamers posting their W's, right? That's it. The only account that exists.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks so much for having me. I guess we should just quickly go over sort of the backstory of why I'm here. So I made a video reviewing and analyzing the Hippy Dippy Championship that you were a part of. And I was pretty critical, I'd say, of your performance. I remember after I finished, I looked back and I was like, wow, I spoke about demonmama a lot here.
You did.
But as I said in the video, it's because you had the most potential. So I'd love to just hear sort of what you thought of the Hippy Dippy and sort of how you felt looking at my subpar video, which has Street Fighter text on it for some reason.
Well, I don't think it was a subpar video personally, so I really enjoyed it. I get a lot of critique. Everybody wants to tell me what they want, and it's only occasionally that I get critique that I feel is like really like truly good faith, and I think that your video was one of those, and I appreciate that a lot. Even though you did critique me a lot, but I think you had a lot of fair critiques that are basically in line with, after taking a lot of critique in the follow-up to that, what I'm aiming for going forward, with a few little tweaks and whatnot. One of the things you mentioned was like wanting to needing to earn the dunks a little more, and I agree. With Rob Noor, I do think there was risk of coming off too aggressive to Rob Noor. However, I did make a strategic choice in going really hard on Rob Noor because Dylan's community is very familiar with me and Rob Noor's history. And I recognize that people outside of that will probably come in and be like, oh, that was a little much. But Rob Noor and I go way back on Dylan's show. Sure. So that one was for the fans, for sure. We have a long history, very contentious history. And in fact, again, only people who are either fans of me or Dylan would have known this, but like I was on Rob Noor's show 2 days earlier, and the reason why I questioned him on what he thought about BLM was because on that panel he went on like a 10-minute rant about how BLM was a terrorist organization, and when I asked him on that panel, he just showed his ass and said, oh, well, and it's like, wait a minute, you just literally 2 days ago you were on your platform screaming about how 100%. Now I will say I think I don't want to say I completely messed up, but I think I misjudged John Burke, and that's because I've never gone up against John Burke, and I went and looked at his general content beforehand, and I did not expect him to be as mask on as he was. His channel, I don't know if you're familiar with his YouTube channel.
Not at all.
Okay, yeah, his YouTube channel.
I've only seen on Hippy Dippy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he has a decent following on Twitch, but his YouTube channel and his VODs are for subscribers only, and they're long form, and it's very hard to get a picture of somebody from just like randomly popping in. But his YouTube content, what he posts to his YouTube is like these really weird comedy skits about feminism. And it's like how to paint like a feminist, and then he'll draw something stupid and be like, "I'm dumb, I'm a feminist."
Still 2016.
Yeah, 2016 bait stuff. And so I was like, okay, I'm guessing that this guy is gonna like not do the mask on thing. He seems pretty devoted to this, but he went straight, like he kept his like it's super in. So I feel like I misjudged, and I wasn't able to get him to show that as well. So I think that was a mistake, and it probably played against me in the Hippy Dippy for sure. Yeah. One thing that I felt like I was struggling with, that I don't know, this is something I always struggle with on any panel, is but it was especially true on this one, was the boys club effect, which was was palpable, and I could feel it the entire time. People asked, Rob and John Burke both basically refused to talk to me at many points of the thing. They just engaged only with Vosh, and that is like, not only, I mean, it's disrespectful, but it's also boring for the viewers. But they do it I don't know that they do it intentionally or whatever. I mean, I think there's a certain level of intentionality to it, but also just it's a certain level of neglectful approach of just being like, yeah, you know, it's kind of weird that like you're on here a 4-way and you're just not going to ask any questions or push back on the one woman on the panel, like, and that's something I have experienced my entire time being in Twitch politics. And
I think if I may, I think you were sort of a part of that was definitely sort of how, as I described in the video, sort of like, even though you're all individuals competing to win, you're kind of in doubles because you agree with someone on the panel,
right? And
I think you and Vosh immediately slipped into, just naturally by sort of the sort of approach that Vosh took, into almost good cop bad cop. Where you came in making really strong positive arguments and hitting really hard straight away, where Vosh came in specifically trying to appeal and sort of build these bridges, and that immediately sort of pigeonholed you both into Demon's job is here to hammer home and bully them in a successful way, and Vosh's job is to, you know, be the nice one.
Yeah.
And if that was a double strategy, perfect, but in singles, you know, you get it struggle. Sorry, it can be difficult to engage once that's sort of established.
I agree, and like part of that was that the you know, the format changed so late. A lot of people don't know this, but like we changed the format from me versus Vosh, which was the original, and then it changed about 3 or 4 days. I can't remember exactly, but 3 or 4 days before before we went on, it changed to a fatal 4-way. So that was a bit of an adjustment. And you know, whatever, it is what it is. But for sure. And the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, don't tell anybody else I said this, but I'm kind of okay with, like, I kind of knew at a certain point that like the belt was kind of out of my reach there, because I either play nice. Now I was in a position where I can't play nice because Vosh is doing the nice guy. So that means I'm the aggro and I'm the newcomer, and this is an audience that is, they like the debate thing,
the fire.
There's a bias towards the like very, very hyper intellectual, like, I'm gonna get you with the facts and logic and that sort of thing. And
Socratic method, you know.
Yeah, but you can't have two people doing that. So it was like I feel like the panel would have been not very popular if it was just Vosh, because like there's a lot of stuff that just would have gotten like I even roasted Vosh a little bit on this, and we had a conversation afterwards. There's literally no bad feelings or anything, but I roasted him about, I can't believe like you didn't go hard on that conversion therapy argument, which was just, it like slipped through, and I'm like, am I the, like, what, did that really just go by? Like we're talking about, you just talked about torturing children, like. Well, anyway, so
it was definitely one of your strongest moments, because you that was a really good opportunity of, no one's talked about this yet.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a huge deal, and this is a positive argument that I can make really well. I think like in terms of sort of like, okay, in the situation of being stuck in as being the sort of aggressor, right? You can't play nice like Vultures. You have to sort of distinct yourself. I think I would just recommend like. Exactly the same way you responded to Dylan when he presented sort of the like devil's advocate argument against unions. That was so strong because you just had an argument. It wasn't, you know, obviously Dylan didn't believe that thing, so you could just go straight at it. And I think, like you said, you have passed with Rob Noor, and you'd seen content from John Burke that wasn't very great. So you come in with a different mindset. But I guess in terms of like a debate, a judge is only going to judge the narrative of that debate. So I think what was needed was definitely to sort of come in and go, recognize, one, I need to be aggressive. Two, I'm going to catch one weird thing that Rob says, and I'm going to hammer it home, which by the end of it, especially on the puberty blockers topic, you did really well on. Yeah. But the first one was I'd say your weakest section, because once again, that mindset was really clear of how you sort of approached it.
Yeah, I think also like the unfamiliarity actually of that they had with the topic played against me. I contest the idea that it was breaking news. The vote was breaking news, but this topic has been raging for like the unionization effort has been going on for 6 months. Yeah, but I mean, I get it. Like that was one where it was like, okay, fine. Like I went too hard there. Like I shouldn't expect everyday people to know about a union effort, even though this is a right versus left panel, blah, 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 whatever. So like, I came across looking too mean there, but like, I
totally got the inclination.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the frustration,
the motivation. Like, if I was in that situation, I would have been like, oh, for God's sakes, just Google something now and say it to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, I think like that kind of, and I think Dylan was trying to play fair there, by being, oh, it's a technically breaking news topic, but I'm like, I don't know. Like I did, like, I already knew about it and I watched a couple videos with chat before we even went on the panel, but whatever, it is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that first section was definitely a sort of weird one because, once again, sort of the fake doubles dynamic would, I say, hurt you in that sense as well, because that first topic's under the premise of there not being a lot of time to research is set up for the lefties to make the strong substantive points. Here are the positive arguments for unions, and then all the others can do is like pick little holes.
Yeah.
But the problem is, once again, I can't remember what the order was, but there aren't that many arguments for unions when you can just keep talking. So they were all kind of made within the first 10 minutes, and then you've got Bosch and John talking a lot, and so it almost ended up being like John and Vosh had that little conversation, and you were stuck talking to Rob Noor, which can never really be fruitful. To be as nice as I can to Rob Noor, it's very difficult to get something.
I agree.
Something going.
Yeah. Rob tends to go into most debates with a series of points that he's devoted to getting out, and then he gets them out, and that's it. And that's the experience I've had with him in most panels. I mean, I don't like hate the guy or anything, but like there are some things that frustrate me about the way that he goes about doing things. I mean, if anybody goes and checks out his YouTube channel where he posts his like car rants and stuff, like, I mean, he dips into some pretty questionable stuff that he then brushes under the rug when he's in public, which is why I wanted to like call him out on that. Partially because like I actually think that that's kind of like kind of bad. Like if you're sitting there and like being the nice conservative, but then on your actual channel you're doing rants about how Chinese communist cultural Marxists have infiltrated the American school system and are brainwashing our children to accept transgender ideology. That's kind of some pretty wild messaging that you've got going on there, and then immediately pretty up all nice when you're on screen and you think you've got a So that's a hard line to walk, and I definitely want to get better at that in the future. I definitely could have done better with John, and I think that I failed to. This was one of the things I even brought up in my own post critique, was I failed to demask John as I had hoped to. Yeah. So
sure. I would say, like, in terms of dealing with Rob Noor, I think of his sort of style as debating at a bar, right? You're talking with someone and they have a million different like vague examples or numbers they've read, and they will stick by them, right? It's like you're talking to them in person. You can't like pull up a sheet to debunk them. You just got to deal with what's being put in front of you. And I would say, like, in terms of two strategies I'd recommend, I would say I'd say like try and avoid what I think I called it mud wrestling in my video, which is just getting caught up in his game and just digging deeper and deeper and deeper, because if you dive into one of these little anecdotes, you're going to get something wrong and he's going to go, but this time they were very cringe, and then you're going to look silly.
Yeah.
Because you he will know more about these half-baked anecdotes than you, even if he's not even right. That in that debate, he fires off so quickly, it can be so
gish galloping like crazy. And in fact, interestingly, I don't know how much like you've dove into the other like ancillary content that was made around this. I don't expect other people to get like super into it, but I did have a conversation with Dylan the next day after, or the next stream after. I think it was 2 days after, and you know, Dylan asked for some, you know, critiques if I had any of the format of everything. And, you know, in addition to saying like, well, you know, it would have been nice to have the topics a little bit more in advance so we could all research up more. But I said one of the big things that I asked was like, hey, like the gish galloping, like you're, you know, as a mod, can you like crack down on that a little bit? Like I get it that it's like it's a debate tactic, and I'm not saying that you need to litigate all debate tactics, but Jesus fucking Christ, that shit is miserable to debate against, and it's miserable to watch. Like it's listening, like people made funny memes out of it, but like it was just like Coca-Cola did this and fit like a 10-minute screed about 20 different random events that nobody has any reference to, that only really serves to like activate the buzzword neurons in his like very small group of followers, and everybody else just has no fucking clue what he's talking about. So that was the one thing I brought to Dylan that I was like, hey, like that would be a good thing to kind of crack down on in the future, because like I mean, I know how to deal with it like relatively well, but it's just very annoying and it's very boring. So
the problem with like engaging with that sort of thing is you kind of just have to ignore it. You need to play the bigger person game where you're like, okay, it's a bit of a rude comparison for Rob, but I kind of think of it like there's like a toddler having a tantrum, and you should just let them finish and then go, okay, time to move on with our lives, because it's not that consequential. Rob's debating I find quite odd, because like I feel like, for example, in, you know, your opening video and his opening video, I thought they were both really funny. I enjoyed Rob's a lot, and I thought it was very entertaining.
Yeah,
and I think that's because it was on a script. Like when he ties himself down to like 2 minutes, he's actually not that terrible, and he had a couple okay moments where he focused on what was happening. But then he just shoots off in a million directions, and like the big one talked to me was like, he talked about like them playing baseball in China, and I was like, that's fun. Yeah, good for that.
Okay. What? Yeah, like I know some of these are just like, it's just like what? And like and if you actually like, I think you might like this, and I'll make a small recommendation, as you seem to love debate. If you watch my old, it's very old now, and so apologize for the more scuffedness of it, but I did a 1v1 debate versus Rob a long time ago.
Oh geez,
so if like
that would be like,
yeah, if you're like interested in understanding more of that background, watch I can get you the link afterwards. It's we debated about whether Antifa was a terrorist organization. Now, originally, the title of that debate was, is BLM a terrorist organization? And then Dylan said, actually, you know, maybe we should put that one, like, let's not have two white people on a white person's panel argue about that. I said, yeah, sure. Like, I get you. I feel you on that. But I am, like, the type of person where I'm like, I don't want... I had gotten frustrated with Rob on a previous, like, panel show that we were on that was, like, a right v left, like, six-person panel, one of those ones. And I was like, this fucking pisses me off. And then Dylan was like, well, you want to have a throwdown about it? I'm like, yeah, like, fuck this. I'm so tired of people walking around claiming that, like, BLM is a terrorist organization. So then we tried to work out the details. And in the end, we ended up having a debate about anti-fascism. And I am very proud of my performance in that one. I still think it's one of my better debates, especially from my early days of debating, where I went in with a research document. I did a full-on research document, and we talked about a lot of things. I talked about the history of anti-fascism, and how he just, like, did not have the argument. And basically what his argument ended up being was a whole bunch of distractions and red herrings. He got really, really mad on this strange, like, there was this point where he claimed that this person was, like, executed by Antifa, and that's actually not even close to what happened. But the Antifa person who he claimed had executed, the guy did kill somebody. It was not an execution, and that's not what, like, any of the following evidence was. However, that guy later got killed by police. He was shot 40 times, like, literally just like Godfather style. They just fucking blasted him. And so I said that was literally like the dictionary definition of an execution. The state found a criminal and then they shot him. And there was no trial. That is an execution. And he got very mad. He's like, you're a hypocrite because you said him killing someone wasn't an execution, but this one was. I'm like, yes, because and then anyway. And that was where I realized that, like, the conversation was never about like a substance, and it was always about getting out a certain set of talking points regardless of the facts, and that was, you know, frustrating. But I think you might like that debate. It's you know, like an hour and a half, and it's very structured 1v1, so
that's perfect then. It's interesting. There's a lot of people who do the circuits of the Twitch panels, and I guess it's part of the fact that it's quite difficult to get conservatives for them, but they kind of, it's just a very specific mindset, and I think it's sort of like, it's almost a way to do a debate without really risking that much, because you're not going to look like a fool because you're not talking. You'll get your stuff out, and then you kind of just sit back and you can relax a bit more. And I think on the point of like John Burke as well, I'm quite interested in terms of the idea of getting his mask off in this sense, because obviously I'd only seen him in other Hippy Dippies as well, and in my head he always just seemed like polite conservative man. I haven't seen anything else about him, and I think like to relate this sort of to, you know, to skip so far ahead in different discussions, to relate a little bit to your spiritual deconstruction. I think that the best way to sort of mask off someone is to, in the same way that you sort of started to lose your faith, is to, you know, logic someone into it. It's not enough to sort of try and goad someone, because if it doesn't work, you look terrible. You need to kind of corner them, I feel like, more. And sort of get them in a position where it's a 50-50. They're biting a bullet or they're agreeing with you, and either way it looks pretty good, which is very hard to do, and is, you know, it requires a lot of sort of control in the conversation. But I think that's generally a better strategy than like poking, because it's, you know, if you poke the bear and it doesn't do anything, you kind of just look like animal abuse.
There are some people that I would say like Rob, and I would also say, even though we've ironed out a lot of our problems in the past, Connor Points. If you're familiar with Connor Points, those are two people who basically, with incredible reliability, if I give a pointed pushback, they will react very strongly usually. And so, yeah, there are times where I think that there is a valid strategy, but yeah, with John Burke, I think that was the wrong strategy, for sure. And yeah, so that's something that, like, I think the approach that would have been better for John Burke would have been, I had a conversation. Are you familiar with who the Distributist is? I don't know if you're familiar with that person.
Very vaguely.
Yeah, they've been really quiet lately. But yeah, for a while they've been a lot quieter. They were kind of doing a lot of content like a year ago, I guess. I don't know how long you've been following the scene or whatever. But I had a debate with them that was like 2.5 hours of me just like drilling down into their positions, and then by the end of it, I really had them pinned. And I went really spicy at the very end, and I was kind of like, listen, just be honest. You just want to call me a T-slur. And he was like, and like he was stunned because he was very frustrated at that point. And then he said, no, now you're just trying to do this. And then he proceeded to immediately afterwards go on this incredibly cringy rant about what he's like, you should have known coming into this what the Catholic position on trans people is. I'm like, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, and he's like, well, you should know. I'm like, well, you're here. I don't know like everything about Catholicism. I'm not a Catholic. You're here to argue your position. What do you mean by that? He's like, well, just look it up. And I'm like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
So you're saying that what you're doing is you're doing exactly what I said. You really just want to say that I'm going to go to hell for being a...
You should have expected me to hate you when we came into this conversation.
I'm like, dude, what the fuck?
You to be nice.
Yeah, and so that's the sort of thing that like I think I need to do with people who are super mask on in the future, and that's something I'm definitely going to be working on. For sure.
That's definitely super hard though in that 4-person panel, because
super hard.
You can't pin someone down because everyone else is trying to speak as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult, and some of that is just a matter of the format, and I don't know. There's probably undiscovered tactics that I don't even know yet that I would like to implement for being able to pull these sort of maneuvers off and tactics off in a 4-person 4-way panel. But I didn't succeed this time, so next time though.
Yeah. I sometimes tend to think it's like sort of like a little gradual process. Obviously I'm not particularly experienced in sort of like the world of like mask on or mask off debating. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I've done debating, but I've never done like type of Twitch politics debating. It's a very different world, obviously. But I tend to like to think of it sort of like just kind of like make little steps, and you're like, oh, but surely it's this would make more sense under what you say all the time. And they're kind of like, and then you kind of get there, and they're like, oh, all right, I'm stuck, and then everything kind of blows up in their face.
Yeah, I think the Socratic thing would have been fantastic, but unfortunately, it was a tough position given the dynamic. Yeah, for sure.
That sort of debating in sort of like a 4-person free for all is very difficult to pull off, because you're not going to be able to speak for long enough to be able to keep.
Yeah,
little
for example,
you've got to go all out.
Good luck ever doing a Socratic method style on an open panel. Will not happen. You won't be able to. Like, it's just not the place for it. And sometimes you can get yourself stuck in a position like that in the open ones. That's part of the reason why I don't really do a lot of open panels. Although I did find myself in one a panel that ended up going for 10 hours, which was...
I saw that video on your YouTube. I was like, oh, jeez.
That was the one where it started as a conversation between a bunch of trans people about trans stuff.
I watched that.
And then Vosh and Destiny joined, and then it became an N-word Andy like ancillary conversation, and I was just like, what the hell? And so I'm just here like, I'm not leaving. I'm going.
To be fair, Destiny, for all his flaws, did have one of the funniest moments in all of Twitch politics in that debate, where like someone somehow brought up the N-word, and he joins the call and goes, "Did someone say the N-word?" And everyone just looks at him like, "Oh my god!"
No, it was the summoning word.
Me.
Yeah, and that was the second time. That was the second time he'd been on the panel. He left and then came back just for that. I was just like, Jesus,
for the real issue,
for the real thing.
For what
honestly,
really
like
mattered.
I feel like
Discourse.
the real star of that panel was well, I can't even call it one panel, but the real star of chapter 3 of that extended panel was Fnatic. Fnatic was so funny in that debate, and oh my god, like it was mostly at the end of it, but yeah, I Fnatic and I have clashed in the past significantly, but I thought he was really funny on that one, and also made a good point. Yeah,
I watched Vosh's segment on that panel, the sort of the 3 hours and 40 minutes, where it was a bit of stuff on trans issues, and then random beef with, is it Vivian?
Yeah, with Vivian. Oh god, that was where I was like, the path of peace, the path of peace. That is one of those ones where like there was a drama quarantine breach. So like I completely understand if you're not like terminally invested in the like the panel scene, that you would have no idea what's going on there.
Yeah.
Because I am like the most terminally invested in the online panel scene person in the world, and I was just like, oh god, this is even touching stuff I don't know about. They were just like tearing strips out of each other, and like I get it, like I
all over the place.
I don't know, like I get their frustrations. They've both pissed each other off for various reasons. I tend to think that like, hey, Vosh, in that particular conversation, I think Vosh was doing a pretty good job offering an olive branch, but I don't think the path of peace was chosen at the end of the day.
even despite your incredible anime speech for unity and peace, I felt very, very inspired, really. I instantly texted someone I was having an argument with. I was like, hey, we should, forget it, everything's fine.
I tried. I did my best. I summoned my best peaceful anime speech energy, but it just didn't work out. Yeah, that was
I feel like
wild.
there's two types. I feel like there's two types of like Twitch panels that I enjoy, because like I consider myself this like intellectual person. I've read books before, and I'm like, yeah, I love seeing two big minds clash. And then I'm like, but I could also watch these 8 people shout at each other, and then one person's just kind of vibing.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes like this is the thing. Like I don't know. There's a broad spectrum of between blood sports and productive debate, and it's a very very hard, like it's hard to figure out where the right spot is. But sometimes, as much as you try to have a serious conversation, the blood sports happens, and you get to a point where you're just like, okay, I'm just gonna, let's see where this goes. All right, let's go. I'm here for the ride. So
I'm sort of interested, like, because we see all the blood sports on screen, and everyone laughs it up. There's great memes and everything. But I'm sort of interested, what is the culture behind the scenes of Twitch politics? Is it like the call ends and everyone's it's like WWE, you go backstage, everyone's like, we had fun, or is it how deep do these sort of divisions run in panels? I'm sort of interested
there is no locker room. There unfortunately tends to not be much of a line. Now, in some ways, I wish that there was more of a line, that people were a little bit clearer about stuff. Like, I mean, I'm very open. I'm a political edutainer. That doesn't mean that I'm like some sort of bad faith actor. Some people will say that to be like, oh, that means you're dishonest. No, it just means that like I acknowledge that like every single day I get up, I turn my lighting on, my style lighting, and I have my curated backdrop, just like most other streamers, and I turn my camera on. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I put a lot of work into it. This was the season 2 beginning, so like, yeah, it was a big project. But so I don't know, like with certain people, you can totally have that sort of thing. Like, for example, Dylan and I are like, we talk a lot about off screen, we're friends, and like we both have an appreciation for wrestling, and so we know like we've watched a lot of wrestling together and all that stuff. And so like, while I will say that like we will never like make up a conflict or anything like that, like we will certainly, like the nuke debate, we went really hard on each other. Like we went like, I don't know if you've ever seen that. A lot of people didn't. I was a lot smaller then. We had a big nuke debate that was like 20 minutes long, and Dylan was just
nuke
like,
is in on
like
on nukes.
Yeah, on nukes, about nukes.
On nuclear armament.
Yeah,
okay,
nuclear armament. Yeah, and I had a position that he didn't really agree with. And it actually got really intense, and like he was like, this is the most dumb fuck opinion I've ever heard, like real angry. And it was fine because like we both know that we're not gonna like kill each other over it. And like, so that sort of thing happens. Unfortunately though, there is a lot of bad blood. There's a lot of bad blood, and most of the bad blood is just bad blood, and it sucks because I think that like it's a bit short-sighted, and I could go into this in a lot of different directions. I'm someone who's been involved in a lot of drama, but and also I'm like weirdly hated on the internet, like even like Vosh and a couple of other content creators have remarked on that. I mean, I obviously, me saying that is going to be like, oh, are you like playing a victim or whatever? But I'm like, no, it's just like, people don't actually know what my content is. They've seen like 2 or 3 clips, and then they build a complete opinion from that. I don't know. It's really weird. Like, I wish that some of it would just be like, hey, like, can we like dial this down just a tiny, tiny bit? But yeah, I don't know. There's like, again, being a veteran of this scene, basically, like a year ago, from this month, like April, May, June of last year, oh my God, there was so much drama. And it's like, there was like 3 different panels running at the same time, and there was like all kinds of stuff that happened that was just like people fighting with each other, and it's very strange. It's something that I'm like trying, like I've been actively over the course of my time on Twitch, and YouTube politics, I guess, been trying to figure out like where everyone stands on that sort of thing, and it's very difficult because I don't know if a lot of people think about it. I think they just kind of like show up and say what they're thinking at the moment, and yeah.
I feel like part of it is sort of in terms of like Twitch politics. There's such a blurring of lines between what is your content and what is your life. Like, think about it. You're on a panel. So you start your stream, you're talking about politics. You go on a panel, you're talking to other streamers. Panel ends, stream ends, you're on Twitter talking with those same streamers. And there's no sort of like, there's no line of like professionalism or even sort of like, it's like as soon as the debate ends, the moderator leaves and everyone can do what they want, is how I kind of think about it.
Well, that's true. And then there's also another aspect of just like, I mean, I think streamers in general really struggle with a work-life separation. We're not really allowed to. And I had an interesting, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember off the top of my head. My brain is like not at peak today. But I had a conversation with someone about what's it called? De-rolling. De-rolling rituals that performers, actors in the theater will do, where when they're constantly on Broadway, at the end of the thing, they will build themselves a like for psychological purposes, a ritual of taking off the outfit of whatever, especially for very intense plays that have like a lot of emotion where you could get really affected by this type of stuff. And I don't know how to do, like, I don't know if that applies directly, but it's something that I'm thinking on, because streaming is a unbelievably like all-encompassing career path. I don't even want to call it a career path. It's like, it's more like a giant gamble, and you kind of like throw yourself. Yeah, it is. It's a weird lifestyle, and you throw yourself into this pachinko machine, and you bump around, and maybe you land in one, and it's very, very chaotic. And we're all contractors, and we're all independent workers, and everything is like, half of everything that we do is like handshake contracts. It's very messy, and it has this like if I was to try and paint a picture of what it feels like you ever seen a Blade Runner? You ever seen Blade Runner?
Haven't seen
Okay,
Blade Runner.
all right. I was gonna say, it feels like when you go into the market in Blade Runner, where it's just like all kinds of shit going on all the time. Okay. It's very messy. There's all kinds of like crime. It's very, very, very
different things, bright lights,
drama, and
Harrison
and
Ford
bad
is
blood,
there for some reason.
Harrison Ford is there, like, what, trying to figure out a mystery, and you're just like, okay, yeah.
But what is the mystery? Ooh.
Yeah, who's going on? Yeah, it's very chaotic, and that is the thing. Like, I think that as a result of that, it can be very difficult for a lot of people, and understandably difficult for people to separate personal grudge from beef on a panel, and there's all kinds of things that some people will take one way and another person might take totally differently. So yeah, it's tough.
I sort of think like I feel like that's sort of a benefit of like VTubing, or what aristocracy does. Because when I first saw aristocracy on a panel, my head is, oh, that's a 3D anime woman, this is pretty cringe. But then she was talking, I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. She seems like a nice person, engaging very well. Seems very good. Saw her interviews with, like with you, of course, and with Vosh and with Dylan, and I thought, wow, she's amazing. And I thought about it, and I began to understand there is a real benefit to not having your face out there. Yeah. In terms of obviously like, abuse and things like that, but also in terms of just having that sort of separation. There is you, and there is aristocracy. There is that figure, and I think that's quite.
Yeah, it is. There is benefits to it, and I think that like, yeah, it's a really complicated subject, because of course there's been like a broader conversation in the ether of the internet lately about parasociality, about and I don't even know if that's I don't even know if the concept of parasociality can even capture everything, because it is weird. It's hard to tell all the boundaries. It's hard to tell, online, like what communities are actually communities versus what communities are actually, just purely for the purposes of boosting somebody's like platform. It's very complicated. One of the things I try to do, and I there is no doubt that I don't do this perfectly either, is I am very, very careful with how I describe myself. I'm very, very careful about like the rules and the words that I choose. So for example, if you go on my Discord server, there's like the foundation's like statement of the server, and some people aren't going to read it, some people are going to skip it, and whatever. But it talks about how like the goal here is to create a community that fosters mutual growth with everything in mind, that the sort of limit of that is that like I'm trying to build a career. So this should not be your like only home or anything like that. Like and I think that like I generally think people are smarter than we give them credit for, even though sometimes there are some examples of people that you go, maybe not. But I think that people can, if you give them the information, if you put your cards on the table, people will be able to make the right decisions most of the time, I think. So, that's another reason why I like try to say things like, I end my streams with much communal love to everyone, because it's communal. And I say that specifically because I don't want I know that it's not like, sometimes it's like, well, people should be able to tell that like a streamer doesn't love them, but it's hard. It can be hard, especially when you've been in quarantine for a year. And I want to encourage that healthy thing. And I think that's part of like, I do think there's a greater conversation that has to be had over it, about how does this work between streamers even? How do people figure out where the boundaries are, and how not to want to kill each other while you're trying to make content together, Yeah.
Yeah. something. It's quite interesting, sort of the aspect of community, because I have a very small channel, less than 1,000 subscribers. But even like when I started to sort of recognize the same people in my comments, I had a wave of. First of all, I was like, "Oh, that's great! I know this person." Then I had a wave of like panic.
Yeah.
I was like, "What is this? Who am I talking to?
Yeah.
How does this person see this and then talk to me about it? It's not right." I had like,
Yeah.
I think maybe it was my like deep-seated stranger danger panic was like alerting my brain. I could feel my mum being like,
Yeah, I mean, and I know that, like, and I can tell you, I feel that to a great degree when I started to realize that, like, I have what to me feels like a modest but reasonable channel that's like, hey,
it's
like,
growing fast.
it's growing really fast. Like, actually
15 soon.
It's actually terrifying. Today I woke up and we had gained 600 followers since the last time I checked, and I'm just like, okay, I can't. I gotta rethink about this. But yeah, it's exciting, but at the same time, it's also like, okay. But like I'm like, okay, I've got this middling sized channel, blah blah blah. But then I look and I'm like, oh wait, there are like a handful of people who basically internet hate stalk me. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, there is in my chat a handful of people who every single day I'm on stream, all they do is spend all day making alts trying to get in to say mean things to me. And I'm just like, there is a person there devoting time to this. And that is very weird feeling. And I don't understand it. And it is a little scary sometimes. And not like on a level where like I have my house is safe. I'm secure, blah blah blah. But it is like, it's very weird that sort of thing. And I don't think I have all the answers to stuff like that. It is kind of strange, and I don't know how to. And I can understand and empathize completely with the like weird moment of panic where you're like, actually, what the fuck is kind of going on here? Like, we're in a frontier a little bit with regard to like human interaction on the internet. So yeah.
Yeah, it makes me think of sort of like I can't remember what movie in particular, but sort of like in like a horror film, some horror films where it's like, oh, if you open, maybe it's like The Conjuring series, like if you open a door, it can go both ways.
Yes,
if you open the door to your fans, you're opening the door to horrible people and weirdos and stuff. And if you don't want to talk about it, that's totally fine. But obviously, I saw that the poll post you tweeted about that, and what was sort of the fallout of that in and of itself, sort of like seeing that and reacting to it, but then also to the wider reception. I saw Destiny's tweet about that, and I haven't really engaged a lot of Destiny's content, and I've generally have like a reasonable opinion of him. But seeing that, I was like, okay, that's insane. I am a very charitable person in pretty much everything that I do when I engage online.
I can tell. Yeah,
I don't have a reason for that.
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, like, obviously, I'm going to be biased, but like, that was bullshit. That was total bullshit. And like, I find it like laughable, the idea that like the thing is, like, it is a Gamergate thing. I think it's a leftover of Gamergate, like this idea that like people fake their own harassment for views and clicks. And I'm like, that, like, I think that's something that maybe comes to some people intuitively, but if you actually think about it for a couple seconds, it actually doesn't make sense. And like, because if I generate a bunch of people hating me, none of those people stay on my content. None of those people give me money. None of those people support me. Why would I? That tactic doesn't even make sense.
Most charitable interpretation I can give is, oh, you would do this because you're someone who builds you build a sort of relationship with your audience of, oh, look at everyone being mean to me, therefore, like, and they'll give you money for that. But one, I don't see much of that in your content at all. Like there are people who you see and they do have like sort of the victim complex, but a lot of the time it's justified or whatever. Like, that's not a bad thing necessarily. Yeah. But I don't see that with your content. I see the opposite. Your rhetoric is very much of is like fighting and being very aggressive. It isn't like, oh, woe is me, the meanies are coming to bully me.
Yeah, I mean, I've told people I'm very open about certain things, which is like, I don't delete hate comments unless they're like really, really egregious, because if they're super, super egregious, I don't want them to turn other like viewers away from the channel. But even then, I leave up my comments. I'm very open about the type of shit that I get. That doesn't mean I'm like gonna play victim, but I think that like people don't actually know how bad it is. They really do not. They think that like there's a lot of people on the internet who assume that their experience of the internet is the same for everyone. That is not true. And again, I don't feel like I play up my victimhood. I'm just blunt about the truth. And I have all of the receipts. I am a meticulous receipt keeper. And so I can always prove this, but most people don't care about the proof. And that is the one thing that was very frustrating about this most recent thing. The poll raid, I mean, you could talk, anybody who wanted to know, if there was a serious journalist who wanted to find out whether I was lying and faking it, would be able to find out the following facts right away. That the poll thread was on the front page for a decent amount of time. It got over 200 comments on it. This is publicly available information. 200 comments, most of which were saying, how do we get this trans woman to kill herself? One of my mods banned over 200 people during that stream. Another one of my mods banned over 50 people, and that's just the two that I've gotten the exact numbers from. We could get even more if you wanted to ask for it. We had to lock down our Discord. The website was getting spammed. We had to lock down YouTube chat because there was so much Nazi talking points and dog whistles being copy pasted into there. Kill yourself. Your family is ashamed of you. 41%. Which, for those who don't know, 41% is a dog whistle that refers to the suicide rate of trans youth. So when, like, and this is not, again, like, I don't feel like stating these facts, like, honestly, is playing the victim. I feel like this is like, and so that was very frustrating to me. And I have, like, again, you know, every time that you get retweeted by a big content creator on Twitter becomes unusable for a couple days because everybody's responses are there. But the level of unbelievable uncharitability and scrutiny that, like, I have a screenshot of like, it doesn't, they're not even willing to consider the sense of it. Like, I was streaming at the time the post goes live. What am I, like, secretly, while talking to people, also writing up a thread calling myself a bunch of slurs at the same time? No, it doesn't even make sense. It's like there's like 12 angles in which this narrative doesn't make sense, and yet a lot of people take the, like, playing victim for money or something as like a valid real thing, but it isn't. You don't make money from posting yourself to poll. You get a bunch of hate, and it stresses out your community, and your mods get sleepy because they have to spend so much time doing it, and sometimes they break through and they do damage. Like, people don't understand that I lost money from getting DDoSed for a week and a half, where I couldn't go on my site. I couldn't receive donations from my site because my site was literally broken. That lost me money. I didn't gain anything from that. Like, and even if you want to go totally charitable to this type of argument and say, like, well, maybe, you know, you got to interview, you got to whatever about, because I did get talked to the serfs about it, but that is a very ancillary, abstract benefit. Yeah, for like okay, so maybe I gained a couple of followers for losing a week of income. Yeah, it's so silly. Like, anyway, I don't mean to go on a rant about it, but it is so frustrating to encounter this type of stuff. You know,
I can totally imagine.
Yeah, it's something that, like, I wish there was less of, but no, like, I can't control what other people say. I can't control that these platforms, like, are cool with that kind of thing. So yeah, it is a very much 11-dimensional chess type thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm playing, 70-dimensional.
Because as I said, like, I operate under, like, extreme charitability, almost to a fault, I think, to a certain extent, where I'll see a tweet about, like, Ben Shapiro, and I'll take the best possible interpretation of it. And then when I see criticism, I struggle sometimes to, like, separate myself from my best interpretation. But this was one case where I was like, okay, I haven't got anything to provide this. That's quite bad. And I think, like, so I've had, like, a tiny experience with internet hate, and so it's sort of, I think it really highlights sort of your experience. So I made a video ages ago. It's probably my second most viewed video. It's called "Laughing at Unironic Monarchists," where someone who was very cringe on Twitter was like, the Queen, God, divine right, they need to have all the power.
Yeah.
And I thought this could be fun. So I had a fun laugh, and it started out all normal, like normal comments, you know, small views, everyone's fine. And it kind of blew up because I got on the tag for monarchism. But it meant that the people who it was blowing up with were monarchists, right?
Right, of course.
So start getting, like, a lot of weird comments, like lots of the F slur and things like that. And, like, you know, me myself, I'm straight, I'm white. There's not really many things they're going to say against my identity. the closest thing they got was they called me a Republic cuck, and that hurt, I guess. But like, so I can see these things and I go, oh, like, it doesn't really bother me because none of it's that identity based. But when I compare it to this, it's so different because like I've been like annoyed from this, and I'm like, oh, it's a small thing. People are just being silly. Then I look at the other side and I go, this is this, but a million times more on way more like direct and personal issues. It isn't someone saying, you're silly because you like democracy. It's saying, because of who you are, I want you to no longer be here. And I can't fathom that. I can't comprehend the dealing with it.
To a certain degree, I couldn't either. Like, I was definitely blindsided at times by the response that I got. But I've told, I've said this before on stream. I'm sure I'll say it again. I have a weird shell, and that's because, like, I mean, part of it is that, like, I have dealt with a lot of, like, very personal struggles over being trans with family members. I grew up in a conservative family who was attached to a very, very conservative, as you saw in my video, very conservative church. And so that means, like, while a lot of these comments don't really get to me on that level, like there is a a person randomly coming in and spamming KYS 41% doesn't really do anything to me. Like, I'm just like, okay, fuck you. You're just edgy. That's so stupid. Like, it doesn't really hit me. Yeah, just get the fuck out. But the broader, like, awareness that, like, I didn't even have to hit 10K, like, to get a lot of people to just hate my absolute guts. Like, a decent amount of people. Like, it's a little weird. I've never, like, there are parts of this whole thing where I'm just like, I don't know, like, I never really thought that, like, this is an incomprehensible amount of people who just hate me and are willing to say they want me to die. It's a very weird thing to deal with. Yeah. Very weird.
It's such a strange experience to me. I don't know if it's just because, I'm British and I'm a softie, but I'm like extremely polite to anyone in any situation ever. Even people I really don't like. I can't stop myself. And I just, like, I see something like this and I can't empathize with it. I don't understand that sort of approach to everything. Like, I can see someone being, like, rude or being like, you're stupid and a terrible person, but, like, that, taking it to that far, it doesn't really make sense to me. And I feel like it's such a big barrier for so many people, especially so many people of marginalized groups, in getting into online political discourse. I think that's a lot of the reason why you're sort of like breadtube debate sphere is, as people see, it's overwhelmingly white. There isn't that much space for it. I mean, especially considering trans issues. I mean, for God's sakes, it's probably as hostile as you can get in terms of online discourse.
Especially right now, yeah. Like, I'm very frank with that. When I do my call-in streams, when I have debates about trans stuff, I get a lot of questions from people who are trans and who are like, "Hey, I want to become a content creator," and I'm very frank. I always tell them, it's going to be rough, okay? Like, it just is. But just remember that, like, as rough as it is, there are a lot of people out there who will support you. I can't tell you that you're not going to get hate. I can't tell you that, like, you're not going to get, like, when I was nothing, when I had no followers, when I had, like, 5 followers, and they were mostly people I know, I would still get people who just pop into chat to say, you're an ugly man, etc. You'll never be a woman, etc. And it's like, okay, like fuck. And I try to tell people, like, it's a fact. It is just going to happen. It shouldn't be, but it is. And it's especially bad now. I mean, you have situations with, like, the Tyler Bluntman debate that I had with again, I don't know if you would have seen that, but that was the build up to the if you saw that, it was, and that was, like, again, like, that guy was given an opportunity to, in good faith, appear on a panel and engage in topics, and that guy was horrible to me while I just sat there and took it right on the chin the entire time. And then immediately afterwards, at the time I had, like, 80 followers on Instagram. He decided to go on Instagram and he put my account in his bio, directing people to me. And then he had, like, 5 or 6 videos saying, "Oh, this transgender SJW triggered and won't debate," even though, like, it's literally a lie. Like, I literally had just debated him. It's just, it's the level
from a debate.
And again, I have 90 followers. What do you care? Why do you fucking care? So I don't know. It is a little bit brain melting and a little bit brain bending. I hope that it changes in the future, but I think we have a ways to go. So yeah,
I think that's sort of like I think that's sort of one thing that you and Vosh have quite a lot in common is you do get a lot of hate, and I think that's sort of partly because of your style, but also I think both of you do quite well in sort of the way you build your community as a means to sort of combat this, because you're both, strongly regulate what is said and what is built and how it is comprised, and that sort of allows you to not get swallowed up by the, H.P. Lovecraft horrible hive mind monster that can just avoid any joy out of engaging in public discourse.
Well, I mean, and that is true. Like, oddly enough, like, I don't even think my rules are that harsh. Like, but we're firm with them. That much I will say. We are firm with our rules, which is like, we encourage contention. We encourage disagreement. I'm a debate streamer. I am okay with debating with people even who strongly disagree with me. But no slurs, no fucking directing hate, no threats of violence. And as it turns out, that appears to be a challenge for a lot of people, and it's unfortunate because I don't feel like it should be that hard, but it is for some people, and it leads to making it very difficult. But I mean, as a result, thank you, Retcon. I appreciate that. My IRL friend of 20 years just came into chat and said, "You suck." As a joke.
Oh, they found us, everyone. Oh, jeez.
Oh,
if anyone
dude.
says I suck, I'm gonna go to bed crying. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say, everyone. Please
cry.
be nice to me.
Yeah, no, it's like yeah.
I'm a soy boy.
Oh no.
No, I'm joking. I can be terribly mean. No, I don't know which way to go. Yeah, it's an interesting thing because like my engagement in this sort of thing has been very direct. Like most of my, I'm obviously this is my first live stream. I've only really engaged, like the most engagement I had was after my monarchism video quite recently. I decided, okay, I'm going to make a video debunking the main arguments. And then for fun, me and my friends, we played a drinking game where we reacted to the comments under my video of people being very rude to me. We sort of ranked them on how good they were.
Yeah.
And basically it was my friends being sort of going like, oh, that person, they really got you. And I'm like, they kind of did. They kind of did. that was really fun.
There's been times where we've done stuff like that where I'm like, oh fuck, I got roasted by this one. There's one I could tell you one right now, which was this is a meme that I actually saved that was roasting me that I actually loved. It made me laugh so hard, and it was from the Destiny gender panel, and it's like a picture from Interstellar of like the main guy, and he's like looking like he's getting blasted back, and
Matthew
it's like it's like asking Demon Mama a yes or no question, and then it's like this little maneuver is going to cost us 51 years, and I was just like, oh fuck, they got me. Good. True. I mean, yeah. Oh, it turns out you can't turn gender into 4 sentences, but true. And so I don't know. That one was a good roast, and like my community is really good. Like my community busts my chops all the time, and I like that. I like. Maybe it's because I studied Latin in high school, but I like warding off the evil eye by the traditional Roman practice of every time you come back victorious from battle, you have a bunch of clowns make fun of you. But no, honestly, it does, it keeps me from getting a big head, but also it's fun. I just wish that it wasn't mixed in with so much just raw vitriol. Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe that's sort of like, that can be helpful as well in dealing with the raw vitriol, is because it's not fire and ice. It isn't everyone's either super nice to me or they're the worst people in the world. It almost provides more perspective because it's the worst people in the world, and then it's jokey fun, like maybe not even fun, just like deep criticism of certain ideas and stuff. And I think that's sort of how you can build a healthy community, which doesn't like build up and then collapse.
Yeah, and that is something that I put a lot of thought into. Is like if you talk to my viewers, they will tell you something that I harp on probably to an annoying degree, is like my desire to build something sustainable. I see all the time, I've been only doing this for a year, and I've been a big stream fan for a long time, but streams come and go. They appear, they have some huge success, then the streamer burns the fuck out, or there's something that just rocks the community to its core, and it all falls apart and it's gone. And it's like, fuck, that sucks. And it sucks that there's so few that are able to sustain. And so like something that I'm interested in is building like a strong, sustainable community, a strong, sustainable show that's going to bring a lot of value over a long time and not just ignite and disappear. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sure. I like to kind of think of it as rather than sort of like your community is like a little plant and you water it and you grow it and you feed it and everything like that.
Yeah.
You want to make like a self-sustaining like mini ecosystem which
Yeah.
can sort of like survive on its own, where like even if say like one day you were like, okay, I'm taking a month off, your community and your Discord and everything would still be doing stuff and churning along.
Yep.
With, you know, even without you, which is like kind of a weird thing to say, like, oh, they don't need me, but it's a nice thing to say because then you've really built something which can last beyond your desire to engage in what you're doing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've talked about this a couple times on stream, but I think it's one of those real things I like to talk about. I like to share with other streamers. A year ago, not a year ago, actually it was a little bit less than a year ago, would have been late June, mid-July, I can't remember exactly. I took a month off from streaming, and my community was very small then, but nonetheless very passionate. And when I came back, I had the same average viewers that I did when I left.
That's gotta be a good feeling.
It actually changed my entire approach to streaming because what happened is there was the George Floyd stuff going on, and I was covering it endlessly. Like, I mean, I was sitting at my desk with a stream of caffeine, watching multiple riot streams, trying to keep track of what the fuck was going on. A lot was happening in my area. People I knew were getting their heads bashed in by cop batons. It was very intense, and I overdid it. And I started having really bad panic attacks. And so I took a month off to deal with that, to like literally deal with that with my doctor. And I was so worried that I was like, this is it, that my stream's over. Like, I'm never going to be able to come back. And that's not true. I came back, and the day I came back, there was a bunch of people there really happy. So it taught me that, like, actually it is okay to take time. It is okay to, like, take a breather. And also, if you build a community that knows that might happen, if that's part of the expectations that you give them, then they are not going to feel blindsided by it. It is a give and take. It is about communication. It's about letting people know what to expect from you. And so, yeah.
But sort of one thing I took away from sort of your spiritual deconstruction, check it out on YouTube, great video, was there was so many like passions and hobbies like that you, I don't know if you still do or not, you know, writing, films was one that I think you really showed a passion for. And I think, like, obviously, you know, endurance streamer, there isn't that much of like, this is everything. Like, do you now you're sort of building this sort of self-sustaining community, do you think there will be more of a return to sort of like starting to get back into these sort of things, like whether it be starting to write a book, thinking about returning to some sort of film stuff?
To a certain degree, like I have to a certain degree, right? Like building this set was the filmiest project that I've had in a while. Now it is a little bit of a one-off thing, but I was like, I want to really apply. I'm going to dig deep and try and remember all my lighting rules, and it's not perfect, but it's like it looks pretty nice, all things considered. And
it's not better than mine. I've got a big shadow. I've got like underlights and uplights.
I mean, it happens, you know, and soft lighting will solve that. But yeah, soft lighting. Yeah.
Write
that down. Soft lighting.
Lighting.
I almost want to hear. Look, I'm gonna do something funny here. Ready? Ooh. Oh, am I gonna fuck up my entire setup by doing this?
Oh.
Yeah, there we go.
There's a big light. Is that an umbrella?
Yeah, it looks like an umbrella. It is a specific type of soft light. Basically, and you can get one of these for about $30 on Amazon, just so you know. And those will kill the shadows in the background, because soft light makes shadows look so soft that you can barely see them. So yeah, there's your secret. What I actually is really funny. Here, I can actually show another thing. This is really silly. This is scuffed, but it still works. This right here is one of my other lights, and what I do is I have it set down here, and it shines against the wall. And as a result, it's not direct, so it bounces off the white wall and provides soft light. It is a trick that I learned from film. So there are some things like that I've put into my streaming setup and whatnot. I am writing a little bit again, but it's for a D&D campaign, which is cool. But yeah, I mean, some art things I would like to. I will say, like, I mean, there were a lot of hobbies and passions and arts that I pursued. I joke that I sort of spec'd into like 100%. If this was a video game, I spec'd into art 100%. And then then like life happened, and it was like, shit. And so of course, as time goes on, I would love to dive back into those. But also I've come to really enjoy infusing art into this stream. And you know, one of the things I've been thinking about is like, as I go forward, I want less content, more artistry, because like I know that like I hate the term content because I think that it's very demeaning to what everybody makes. There is
factory line.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and yes, as Era Geddon, our wonderful visiting VTuber. Hi, Era. Good to see you today. It ain't much, but it's honest. That's true. That's true. But I mean, I don't know. Content is a silly term. I mean, there is some stuff that's definitely content. You know, when you're reacting to a reaction of a reaction, that's a little bit contenty. But you know,
there's 4 panels on the screen.
Yeah.
Everyone's screaming at once.
I did a stream once that was I was just like, all right, you know, we've been doing heavy topics, let's have fun. And I called it the maximalism stream. You might have seen a screenshot of it somewhere. It was me reviewing Vosh versus Mike from PA. And what I did was I said that any donation that I got of any size that had a GIF attached, I would put that GIF up on my screen. And so as the debate's going on, we weren't even like, I was barely even analyzing it. We were just laughing at it. And I was putting GIFs up on the screen, and we had it like these like shitty little dancing skeletons, and it got out of control. And so
how can you analyze that debate for a first? Honestly, that's probably the best approach ever, is just to distract people as much as possible so they can deal with the pain that's going on screen.
It was so much blood sports, but it was just so bloody. It was if it was real life, it would have been the equivalent of like a fist fight between 2 people that you vaguely know. Like
still to this day, I don't know what sewer socialism is. I haven't Googled it. I mean, Mike told me to, but
well, damn, you're out of the loop. You're missing out. You could be living in the utopia, the sewer socialist utopia, like I am.
We did it.
The thing is, it's not even a bad concept. It just wasn't really relevant to the conversation.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. That I love that sort of like content, because I don't know, like I said earlier, I love the sort of like highly intellectual stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I love the battlefield of ideas. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, but I would like to see Vosh yell at a tanky for like an hour and a half. That would be pretty fun. Like, it depends what I'm doing. You
got to find the balance, right? Like, I mean, this is why, one of my big inspirations is, and was and still is, the Majority Report. And if you're familiar with Majority Report with Sam Seder, I watched that show religiously for years. Like it was like my favorite thing to listen to when I was working. And like that show has the fun half, and they do the first part, which is like super good, and then they go into the fun half, which is a little bit more silly. They have libertarian callers. I think that's like a super good thing to do. It is really important to mix things up, to have to diversify a little bit, and so I think it is okay to have some of those blood sports debates from time to time.
Sometimes I sort of had a similar experience when I started making videos, and some of them started getting like some views, right? And I was like, I'm a serious political commentator now. 400 people are subscribed to me. I'm a big deal. So I didn't want to do like really silly stuff. So there was like a period of like 2 videos where I made like pretty serious analyses, but only like a couple jokes that I was like mostly in editing.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, that's so boring. Like I just couldn't do it. And then the next one I made was it was called Exploring Champagne Socialism. And I drank a whole bottle of champagne and presented like the history of the term and like whether it makes sense or not. And ever since then I've been like, okay, I can't do real things.
Yeah.
I don't have the capacity.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know. Like, I think that those things are real things, right? I don't know. That's just why, like, I am very clear about saying I'm like personally, I'm a political edutainer. You're here. Yeah. Like, my goal is for everybody to come in, have a good time, and walk away learning something. Hopefully something good. And there's some times where it will be more serious, but it's okay to have some fun. We live in a wild world. And, but also one small thing I will say, you say, oh, I only have 400 subscribers, and I know it's like this.
925 actually.
925. Hell yeah. Now, like the modern era has warped our understanding. A show like. There are entire television shows that ran for years on local access that would have had like an average viewerships of like 12 to 20 people, and those shows had budgets They had a team. They used an actual studio. And now it's just like, we've gotten to a point, and I hate to do the fucking lefty meme of like, we're in late capitalism, but we're at the point where it's like, where like the corporations are like, you made this show out of in your garage with like a string tied around your iPhone from hanging from the ceiling for your mount, and you're only pulling 35 average viewers. You got to get cracking. You know, if you want to make money, you've got to have. And it's like, wait a second, there were like grants for like $50,000 yearly grants that went just for the equipment of running a show where some old dude sat down and talked about his experiences while he painted on it. Like, it's just like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know.
What's the deal with airline food?
Yeah, and it's like, okay,
that sort of stuff.
That was worth like spending $10,000 on at some point. I mean, I guess it's maybe part of it is like the collapse of public arts and stuff like that. But I mean, right now, I do feel like corporations are very spoiled with the amount of content that their content creators churn out for nothing, and then they might make it. You might make it to a point like where I'm at, where I can pay my rent with it, and it's like, anyway, yeah. So feel proud of that regardless, because in a previous age, you'd be famous. You'd be locally famous. Like, so you gotta. I know that the corporations, they're not gonna give you the money that you deserve for it. They still take 50% of everything, but you should be proud of what you've accomplished, because it is cool that there are 400 people on the planet who are interested in, or 900 now. Sorry, I just was latching onto that old number.
That's fine. I've been using different numbers the whole time.
1,000, whatever it is. There's 1,000, a literal legion of people on this planet who are interested in your work, and that's fucking cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much. It is like, I don't know. I just enjoy doing it, and like every video I do because I like doing it, and then if I like it, if other people like it, I'm like, that's nice. And if people don't like it, I'm like, they don't have good taste anyway. I don't know. I feel like it's a very good hobby to have, and then if it happens to spiral into something else, that's a great thing as well. It's such a weird world, I think, like in terms of content creation, because like you can see like, oh, this is fun and I enjoy doing this, and then it can just veer off randomly, and then you see all the negatives that can come with it, as well as, you know, the positives. I think a common meme I see a lot of content creators do, which is like, oh cool, like day one of like YouTube, oh yeah, my job is gaming, and then the next bit is like people tweeting at you, and then like a million different like files in Adobe Premiere layered on top of each other. Like,
yeah, I saw that meme. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Behind it, which just pushes ahead.
Yeah, it's true. It is true though. Like it gets wild, and like, I don't know, like there's a culture in online content creation of like just doing it on your own all the time. I don't think that's sustainable for most people. I think that people should get comfortable with bringing on team members, working together with each other, and but yeah, it's a lot. But hey, like if you've managed to get anybody, I always tell people, if you reach affiliate on Twitch, you should be proud of yourself, because statistically, you are a giant. You're great. You've done something amazing. You've been a part of history. Even if you don't feel like it, you have. You are just statistically, just on a raw numbers. You might not feel like it, but the numbers don't lie, and you have made it, you know, to a certain degree. And it sucks that like so much of what we all do is just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't suck. I've said this many times in my arguments with people. This is something that comes up in my arguments about capitalism versus socialism, which is a topic that comes up with me a lot, where I'm like, people are like, well, nobody's going to do anything if they're not paid for it. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? I did this like 40 hours a week for a year without ever getting paid. And now I am, and it's nice. It's definitely nice. I really don't want the pay to go away. That's great. But like, there are entire communities of games that overhaul mods that take so much unbelievable manpower and effort, and nobody gets a cent from it. They do it for the passion. They do it for the appreciation of their audience. They do it for the art. And I agree that like we should pay people for it. But if you think that pay is the reason why people do this, that's not why. It's not pay that people do this for. That's just, we need pay to survive. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's so much content out there on the internet. Like a big thing for me is like I recently I had a Mac for years, and I recently got like a gaming PC, and I was like, this is cool. I can play games on Steam now. I can get mods. This will be fun. And I recently playing Black Ops 3. Zombies. I used to be very big Call of Duty zombie kind of person, and I was like, oh, I've heard mods are great, so I played a couple of them, and I was like, I like clicked subscribe. I was like, okay, I guess this will show me to the link where I buy it, and then it was on my game, and I was like, what? This is a whole map that's like twice the size of like the base game's one. Where has this come from? And it is, I don't know. I think like it's rather like cringe, but it's like super inspiring to see like someone make something just for people to enjoy it.
Yep.
Where like they deserve so much compensation, but they don't get it. I don't know. It just like it provides it. It's nice to see, you know. It puts a smile on your face.
Yeah, it does. I actually had a whole conversation with a content creator, a smaller content creator on Twitch named Zanzi. I don't know if you ever heard of him or
No.
you should consider talking with him. I have a feeling you'd have a really good time. He's an Irish socialist who does lots of speed runs in his free time, and incredibly intelligent fella. And we had this great conversation once about modding communities, and we talked about World of Warcraft. You know, I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, and there's this. It's fascinating because there's the entirety of World of Warcraft's modern gameplay is held up because of free mods. That is it. The only way you can even do the content that is made by a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it would be unplayable if it wasn't for a handful of community mods that have been maintained for like 10 years. No pay ever from Blizzard. And that blows my mind. That alone just goes to show you that like humans aren't just greedy creatures that run around scooping up all the money they can and then going on their own way. That we're deeply social. We really appreciate one another, even if there's a lot of imperfections in our communication, and we make some cool ass shit. So yeah.
I think that sort of links back a lot to the idea of sort of community building, right? Because these, you know, in the case of like World of Warcraft, these mods weren't built because a content creator or a big figure was like, we need to do this, someone go out and make it.
Yeah.
It was a self-sustaining thing of, we want to keep playing this game, let's make this thing together, and then boom, you've created a continuing system which allows for something so self-sustaining and so community-based to survive. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
It really is. And you know, there's all kinds of different stories as to how the like certain mods came up, but at the end of the day, what you realize out of stuff like this is that there is a great desire to help each other have more fun. And that's really cool. So yeah, it is wholesome. Yeah.
It's just nice. It's just nice. Yeah. A bit of a tangent here, but just so you know, I should probably say this right now. I saw your video you posted today earlier, and I have called the police because I did hear that you did a lot of murder.
Yes, I killed.
So a significant amount. He sounded perfectly correct to me. I trusted him.
That's good. That's good.
So expect a
meeting.
Open up, FBI. Open up very soon. Like on that sort of debate though, like obviously that was a vegan debate. What are sort of like the topics that you're sort of like wary of diving into because whether it's because like they're so complicated and weird and difficult to argue, or they just come with such a like community of toxicity or oddness? You know, what are sort of the reluctant areas that you sort of like dabble in?
I wouldn't say I'm reluctant to engage in veganism debates. I get very irritated by them. There's a couple of reasons for that.
Don't worry, I know
most of them were on display in that video. I think I made my case for why I get frustrated with vegan debates. That's one of them. The vegan community is very passionate, but I kind of understand to a certain degree, right? Like, I mean, if you know, I don't think they're wrong on the ethical prescriptions as I stated in that video, but it's like I think the tactics are really wrong, and that is one where if I talk about it, it is inevitably going to generate strife. So I take that carefully when it's time. All right, and this time I didn't do it. I was just trying to eat fucking dinner. That's all I was trying to do. So, you know, but
I thought there was a very like primal reaction there. Like it's like when you go to like you try and take your like a bowl away from it's a very primal reaction of like someone messed with your food and you're like, okay,
yeah, I mean,
get well away from me. If someone takes a plate away from me and there's food on there, I'm causing a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, food, water, shelter, and like using the restroom are like some of the most like personal things that you could possibly have. And like, I understand that there's serious issues to be discussed there, but like you're like, it is like, we're literally wired to like feel a little bit, you know, private. about that kind of
yeah.
stuff. Like, I don't know. If I wanted to be very, very hyperbolic, I would say, like, how would you feel if you were like taking a shit and somebody kicked the door down and started criticizing what you were doing? Like, it would be you would feel incredibly violated. It's not quite to that degree because we do eat food in public, but when when I don't think that there's any difference between like approaching, or much of a difference between approaching somebody about like the food they're eating on a vegan level and if approaching someone, like somebody walking up to me and being like, oh, you should stop eating that because you're overweight. Like they're really similar. They're very, very similar. Like, so yeah, there's some frustrations there. I'm trying to think. I want to tie back to the actual thing and not get too much hung up on the vegan thing, but
that's okay. It's a fun topic. Also, just very quickly, those in chat, vegan is a banned word. Make sure you do the little star asterisk thing and then the rest of the word, please.
Exactly. Yeah, careful with that one.
Yeah, so like I think this is sort of a topic I see like people talk about where they go, okay, I'm not doing this sort of debate.
Yeah.
For various different reasons, right? Whether it's because it's complex or the people in it are horrific. Are there any topics that you're like, okay, this is like a hard line, I'm not doing it?
I think, well, one of those is probably like Holocaust denial. I don't like, I might someday do some sort of debate with that, but it would need to be something I prepare massively, because that is one that is so egregious. It is so full of propaganda. It is so used in a particular demagogic way that I don't really feel like I can engage in it responsibly almost at all. It's very difficult. Another one like that I engage in frequently, but that I'm careful with, is debates about trans stuff. Now, if it's on my terms, that's fine. If I go and like I did with Redneck, where Redneck is somebody who has treated me publicly and nobody even knows who he is, and that's good. Sorry, just true.
I know who he is, unfortunately.
You probably do know who he is. Yeah, if you he's some dude who tried to make his way up in conservative Twitter or conservative Twitch. And I mean, the guy, he like was very, very transphobic to me. I mean, to the point where like he was literally speculating about like the existence or non-existence of my penis publicly in front of thousands of viewers when he went on to Dylan's show. And it was just like Dylan couldn't even stop it because he just jumped right into it. Which is a really fucking weird thing to experience. And but Dylan said, hey, like, I respect you. I want to give you the opportunity to debate this guy because he's got a bone to pick. I know that it's like it could be bad platforming or whatever, but I trust you with it. If you're up for it, you're down, no pressure either way. And I said, give it to me. It's on my grounds, I knew what I was going to experience. I knew what people were going to say. I knew that he was going to say some shitty stuff, and I knew what I was dealing with. What I don't like is getting involved in debates with where I don't have that level of say in it. If somebody comes on and starts debating me about like another trans person or something about trans stuff, I feel like that can get very harmful very quickly, and it's something that I personally have become increasingly careful and will probably be even more careful with in the future, just because it's a very personal thing. And then I'm trying to think if there's any other like issues that I just don't touch. I do try to be very careful with foreign affairs like stuff, because I am not I want to be better at international stuff, but the reality is that I don't have the equipment. And one of the harshest criticisms I ever got was from Dylan Burns TV when I was a literal like 15 viewer Andy, and I had, who was at the time Mel, my friend, my friend Mel, on to talk about issues and of foreign policy, and I was still learning. I didn't really push back as much as I should have, and Dylan was like, yeah, that was a big mistake. Like, a lot of disinfo got out there, and I know you didn't mean it, and I learned from that, and I took that criticism on the chin and totally changed the way that I approach it. So yeah.
I think like on like foreign policy, like I've studied US foreign policy at university, and like I feel like for these sorts of discussions, it's so important to have really clear defined terms, because things are so complicated and so nuanced a lot of the time, especially in foreign policy, that like you need to know what you're talking about when you come in, and you can't afford a tangent, because you just won't know something or it will go off. That's why like there's so many, every time after Hippy Dippy, there's a video of Dylan Burns tearing his luscious hair out as someone talks about foreign policy, and it is something it can be very difficult to navigate.
Yeah.
Even in like an essay that I write, I will get feedback like, you don't know enough about this topic, and it's like, you shouldn't. And I'm like, what do I do? I can't know everything. And they go, just shouldn't have mentioned it.
Yeah. I mean, and I think there's a certain amount of that, right? But at the same time, it's like, I mean, the nature of the subject is the interaction of sovereign states. And it's like, that is a level of complexity. It's like, if you're the type of person who you look at like a video game like Crusader Kings, and you go, Jesus fuck, that's way too much for me to deal with. When you start to move and talk about the actual thing, it is 12,000 times more complicated. We're literally talking billions of people, and they're all of those opinions being filtered up to like the relevant government officials, and then those people with their own agendas. It's ridiculous. And so it's something I'm very careful about, because much like how this is an issue that affects many people, what I say could end up affecting many people. So I try to be very careful about that type of topic. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I totally understand it. There's such a I feel like that's part of the sort of environment of streaming in general, right? Because if you're streaming for 8 hours, you're there, you're like it's almost like you're having a conversation with chat a lot of the time, right? Unless it's something that you're really passionate about, you're going to be conversing and sort of giving your like intuition a lot of the time. And then this just leads to, in some areas, like most often not intentionally, just being very wrong, or like going out on a limb with something you kind of think or you heard vaguely, and then down the line you can see these arguments being repeated, and it can be so hard to wrestle back and go, oh, okay,
it's
maybe
basically impossible.
Maybe it was a bit.
When the cat gets out of the bag, it's impossible to put it back in, especially online. And so I try to be careful. Now there are some things I don't believe that like all people with any platform have like the utmost responsibility to communicate everything with 0% misinformation. It's just like if you are presenting yourself as like an informer on a subject, you should be careful about it. And that's something that I try to do. Like I do this, like I have a series you probably know about called Drama Mama. I haven't done one in a while because I have been working on like the next big stuff.
More Drama Mama, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Drama Mama's in chat.
Yeah, Drama Mama is
dying to say in chat. I've never done it before. That was great.
Yeah, you'll get
sorry to derail everything.
There's a
but
small
I really
delay
wanted
on my
to say something in chat always.
Yeah, get some Drama Mamas in chat. We actually don't have a drama emote, but we should. But the drama.
I want to see the power that I have. I'm looking at chat.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm totally...
No, you're good. Yeah, see the Ray Fisher Drama Mama. You got some people popping up with this. But yeah, it's one of those things where Drama Mama is something that I would love to do more of, and I want to. And the thing that I do with Drama Mama is I do big research document. We get all of the receipts, we figure it out, and we're saying, all right, this is a developing story, but with a level of reasonable certainty, you can know we are getting you the real story. And and I make those sort of statements beforehand because I want people to know what to expect and where their limitations are. I think there's we live in an age of Fox News, which is not a news company, but they call themselves Fox News. Yeah. And so we could all do to be clear about it. Yeah, I mean, people are mentioning the SDL stream, which was not a Drama Mama, but I did do my best to say, okay, like I'm going to be harsh but fair in this. I'm going to go through, and I'm very proud of the document that I produced on stream while going through that and saying, okay, well, here's what we need to consider. Here's what some people might feel about this. And, do they have a reason to feel that way? And I'm interested in those types of things too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's sort of almost like a a character arc or like a character arc, I would say, like in terms of being the one who is in this drama and struggling with it and having to deal with it, and then being able to go, okay, I am in a position now where I can objectively and through as much research as possible try and analyze it in a public manner. And I think that's something that's very important, considering the sort of the way that online discourse is comprised, because there's just a lot of misinformation. I mean, like at least once a week, I see, like, for example, Xander Hall. I get that, like, he retweets a fake Discord like message or something like that, and then sometimes they turn out to be real, like with SDL. And I think having a sort of clinical approach can be so important, because I think even we talked a lot about the hate that one can get from the right. There is still so much internal conflict and difficulty that can be built within the left, and I think that's something that is becoming increasingly clear. Yeah,
and something I focus on a lot is the concept of trust, and trust is incredibly important when we live in this sort of, again, the mess of the internet, where it's just like everything is handshake agreements, and the corporations are just issue you a contract that says we're gonna dunk you if you ever violate our TOS, and if there's
our vague TOS.
Yeah, our vague TOS. It's crafted by our legal team to be beneficial to us. You're gonna be will cut you if you start to cost us any money, even if you've been working for us for years. Yeah, it's it's one of those things. So again, trust becomes everything, and how you establish and how you verify and how you build trust is a massive question. And I think one of the ways you do that is by challenging misinformation and putting a scrutiny, like some scrutiny on it, and also dialing back the immediate reactions, because sometimes that can lead to a lot of misinfo, and it can make it worse.
Yeah. Yep. Perhaps this is a bit of a random link, but I feel compelled to sort of link this back to, once again, the spiritual deconstruction.
Absolutely.
Because I think a big part, I say one of the major themes of the video is sort of the idea of control and structure, right? Moving from an incredibly structured and organized in I imagine a very detrimental way within the Calvary Church.
Calvary Chapel, yeah.
And it was one of the points that I'm dying to ask about, which is that moment when you sort of you describe losing your faith instead of that little switch, right? What was the sort of feeling of what was the feeling in that moment, right? Because like the natural one is, oh my god, I've realized this, I'm so smart. But I feel like, is it almost something like, is it, not to be rude, but is it almost like stupidity, like you've been duped for so long? Is it panic in terms of like just the fear of the breakdown of sort of like the structures around you, sort of the fear of freedom? I'm really interested in that sort of pivotal moment.
Yeah, it was a complex emotion. Like, you know, it's funny when I retell the story, but basically what was going on in my mind, I remember very clearly because it was so intense. It like burned into my mind. And it's like, there was a lot of, I don't want to say like, it wasn't terror, but there was a lot of fear of like, what does this mean? What is this going to mean? Like, how am I going to live like this now? Like the shell just went and just gone. It was just like a house of cards, like, and then there was this kind of like relief of like, I was grappling with a lot of gender things at the time that my religion was not friendly to. And so there was this like, wait a minute, I can start answering those questions now.
You can be intellectually comfortable with.
Yeah, I can allow myself to think about them. Yeah, and I don't have to run away from them, or I don't have to feel super guilty about that. And then it was like, but am I going to tell my family? Who am I going to tell? What am I going to, like, how does this change my future? What do I believe now? And there was a little bit of excitement of like, well, now I get to figure out what I believe in a very different way that's sort of like much broader. It was like, you know, almost like I don't even know what an equivalent is. Like maybe to pull a video game analogy, where it's like you get through, you go into a game totally never having played it before, and you're having a great time, and then you like get to a point and you realize, oh my god, there's a whole bunch more to go. And it was like that, where it's like, oh, I have spent so many years just like digging into this massive, I mean, I have the Bible right there, it's a fucking huge ass book, digging into it and getting all of it. And then it's like, wait a minute, this isn't even the beginning. This is one book out of thousands upon thousands of religious texts, let alone philosophy. And so there was a certain level of excitement with it too, in addition to the fear and the perspective of like, oh fuck, like I'm a fish that just got tossed into an ocean. And so that was it. There was a lot of that, and then of course like it got more complicated over time, but that was the immediate feeling.
Draw like my own terrible video game comparison. I kind of think of it like like you play Skyrim for the first time, and you do all the story quests in flight. You have a very structured experience of the game, but then halfway through you pick the wrong mission marker and you end up in a different town you weren't supposed to, and suddenly you realize, oh, there isn't just one line, like there isn't just one path to the end of this. There's a million different options. And I think that was something that really I found very interesting. I was also fascinated in sort of the idea of like the balance between the intellectual realization and sort of the gradual process of like growing alternatives. So like I had the BBC's disinformation specialist who deals with like conspiracy theories and things like that. She's called Mariana Spring. She does great work. I follow her on Twitter. She does amazing stuff sort of covering these conspiracy theories. She talks about how a lot of her work isn't about debunking and arguing against. It's more about de-radicalization. A big part of that is providing different social groups. So you can show people an alternative that you don't have to stay in this community.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in is how much of this sort of change was purely a rational, oh, I've been convinced on this idea, and how much of it do you think was finding different social spaces and making friends who are different and outside of this group and sort of seeing a viable alternative to what you were doing?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because I think it's like it's so enmeshed that it's hard to tell, right? Like, because I wasn't able, like, I had already begun to critique the cult that I grew up in like before I went to college, but I really started to challenge religion when I went to college because I started meeting people from all over I met people from all over the world because I lived in this international like a floor that was specifically designed to get American students who had an interest in international stuff to meet international students who had an interest in learning American stuff, and I immediately I went from like knowing basically nobody who believed anything other than Christianity and maybe like agnosticism to meeting people of all kinds of different religions. So that did challenge me and it did change a lot. And then there was, of course, I had a very patient friend at the time who we were both patient with. We argued all the time. We debated all the time, a philosophy student. And we went back and forth and it was good. It's hard. And I think this is one of the things why I don't use terms like de-radicalization in my in like how I talk about the stuff that I do, because I don't really think it can happen online. I think you like people can like online content creators can play a role, but like it's like as like a tool that somebody who's already begun to have like their shell break like so they can pick it up. Yeah. Like to like be like, yeah, I mean, for me, that's true. Like there were a bunch of content creators that were very helpful when I broke out of my religiosity, and it helped me build new things and whatever. But like getting out of it is such a personal and enmeshed process. And that's how indoctrination works. It's in, you know, I would love to even talk about that more in the future, but that's a whole subject in and of itself. I think that, I think it's important that we realize the limitations, but also acknowledge like how important it is for people to build social connections that are outside of these harmful groups. And yeah, it's incredibly complicated. So I hope that answered it, but it is a huge topic. Yeah.
No, it's a very like existential question, isn't it? Like,
yeah, it
what
is.
caused this thing? You know, and I think another way sort of approaches sort of like, when did you start to sort of look back on your time in Calvary and sort of like start to identify as a cult and start to identify the manipulation methods and sort of like the systems and the structures of control and the methods that it used, right? Because I feel like in the deconstruction, it sort of felt to me like you had this realization that you didn't believe in God more, but perhaps it was a bit longer that you sort of look back and you're like, oh, like maybe I didn't come to these conclusions by myself. That's sort of what I'm kind of interested in.
Yeah. Like the cult thing was, I mean, I only really fully started acknowledging that relatively recently. For a long time, I just thought they were kind of like an extreme church, and I recognized that they were pretty extreme relatively early on, but it took a lot of like thinking back about it, a lot of like going through my own personal therapy and stuff like that, and thinking about how it worked for me to really go like, oh wow. And like actually, you know, I think I could tell you the moment that I first started to realize that, which was a bit ago. It was probably about 5 years ago. I was jamming out with some friends, and in this barn that my friend had, and one of the guys who was there was like an old, what's that? Yeah.
America.
Yeah, true. But we had like this barn that we put a bunch of amps in and stuff. It was cool. And but I there was this guy there who was a guitarist, and he mentioned we'd been hanging out, and he started talking about the pastor and his personal experiences with him, and how like and I didn't even know this story. It was just, he's just a random guy. He had no platform whatsoever, just some dude, and he got totally fucked by this pastor. And his story checked out, like he wasn't just making this shit up. And I was like, oh, yeah, this was like a personality cult going on here. There was a lot more than just extreme religion. And so that was one of the moments where I started to really rethink the way that I viewed it and the way that I talked about it. And I realized, and there were other things that came out later that I talked to family members with more pointed questions, after that point, and found out some similar things that happened to them that I had never even seen. So yeah.
It's so difficult to try and analyze these sort of things, because even just the fact that our memories aren't incredible, so you can't really decipher what you were thinking in any moment.
Yeah.
And I think especially when you consider, for example, you described your baptism scene where there's so much social pressure and social enforcement around it that you're flushed with so many emotions, even just the rush of dopamine. You're not going to have a full conception of what's really happening.
Yep.
And
especially when you're
even
when
have
you're
some
as young
form
as
of
I was.
introspection.
Yeah.
I
was 13.
Especially considering.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think perhaps it's crude, but I almost think there's that sort of linkage between, to a much lesser extent, this and then sort of how you see people with parasocial relationships and people that they love and they adore, where do I like this person because I like the things they say, or do I like the things that they say because I like the person? And there's sort of that blurring of a line, right? Where sometimes you feel yourself getting caught, and I've had this as well with content creators that I've enjoyed, where they say something and I go, I don't like that, but I'm struggling to admit to myself that I don't like this.
Yeah.
Because because I like them and I like them personally, and that's sort of a big step in sort of moving on from certain ways, or sort of starting to realize that maybe my epistemic valuation of myself isn't as strong as I think it is.
Yeah.
Because it can be moved in so many ways.
Absolutely. And I do think, something that I agree with you that there's a certain level of that in parasocial stuff as well. And it's that social inertia, something we should be cautious of and cognizant of. It's a big topic, and I certainly don't have all the answers, but I just know that it can be utilized very, very, very negatively if it's not kept in check. So it's something people should think about. Yeah.
It's so interesting. I think when looking at your story and the amount of recurring concepts and themes that we see, like masculinity playing such a big role in the structure of a cult, and then that going further, the idea of liberal degeneracy being talked about in terms of the way you live. There's so many present concepts that just infiltrate every single aspect of things, even which we would consider totally separate. I would never think that a 2015 SJW video talking points would lead into something so extreme, but it's
a back and forth too, right? Some of these topics, some of these ideas have been percolating in the undercurrent of conservative America for a while, and then they get sort of scooped up and slightly rebranded, or maybe a different term for the similar thing, and then they get blasted out to everybody, and it can be overwhelming to try and parse those. But there's a reason why I became pretty quickly skeptical of the skeptics movement online, despite the fact that I was I was leaving the church, and it was just I realized, well, wait a second, there's certain aspects of this that are replicating itself. And when there's this anti-feminist turn, I was like, whoa, what's going on here? What's happening? And then you see, you saw some of the people start spinning into the weird Christian signaling with the MAGA stuff, and it's all blends together. But that's just a fact when you have a large political faction that is fueled at the very core by the religious right. It's very complicated, but yeah.
It's such a strange sort of way to analyze things, because I remember sort of when I began to sort of analyze politics in a more critical way, rather than oh, this is a politician, I don't really like them. And I started to consider people talk about these lenses analyzing something through the idea of gender, analyzing something through the idea of race, right? And as white straight person, I'm gonna go, that's silly, that doesn't, politics is a neutral thing. And the more you sort of look into it, you see how these structures play such a role. I mean, for God's sakes, I think it was perfectly encapsulated in the speech you played of that pastor, no feeling speech or whatever.
Yeah.
Where it was masculinity, it was emotion, and it was all of these structures just getting and liberal and conservative, all these things getting thrown into one piece. to build a monolith of a cult, essentially. It's so difficult to understand.
Yeah, it is difficult, and they do interlink. And you know, over time, my goal, and I will eventually someday do a part 2 version or a remake of the spiritual deconstruction. I sort of decided that. I think you probably saw the preamble that I did, where I'm like, I will probably be
get
doing
like a
this
Zack
thing.
Snyder cut by any chance?
Yeah, exactly.
I
the
would
mama
really enjoy
cut.
that.
Yeah,
Just like a green filter and lots of cuts.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want to do that at some point, because there are concepts that I haven't worked out the best way to communicate them, and some of that is how, like, the homophobia, the toxic masculinity, the conservatism, and the like obsession with power all linked together, and being able to illustrate that effect. I think that speech, to people who are familiar with what those things sound like, they see them all in that speech and it clicks. But I think there's probably people out there who don't really know of those things yet, and they see that speech and they're like, this is scary, but I don't know why. I don't know why this comes across as so moving and also sinister, and also like, you know, and also how do people who aren't sold by it, but who might be like, this is weird, but I don't really understand it, you know, how do they start to understand the minds of people who are brought in by it? You know what I mean? Because there was a time in which I sat through that type of speech all the time. And there were, like you said before, there's like moments where you're like, I don't know how I feel about that, but you don't know how to respond. And you're so caught in the moment that, I mean, part of the thing that cults do is they lure you into not thinking and just feeling whatever the leader is putting out. Yeah.
An open mind is the castle door being open. You know, the thought terminating cliches. That was a big part of it as well.
Yeah.
I'm sort of interested, like, obviously it's very different. In very different cases, it's very different. But you think that, are there any advice you could give someone, even if it's not specifically a cult, but any sort of like highly control based sort of structure that people are stuck in? Do you think there's any sort of like signifiers that you could recommend people sort of like try and look out for if they happen to be watching this or hear about this? I know it's so many different experiences, but if there's any sort of like areas you think you could go, oh yeah, maybe this is something that you should be a little bit worried about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is God, like it does depend. Like, I mean, I always try to say that, like, the hyper masculinity thing, like hyper masculinity is and I don't mean just like somebody who's like, oh, I'm tough or whatever, because, you know, there's a lot of people like Vosh is pretty masculine, but like Vosh does not have that sort of same element of like, I don't even want to say the word arugula because like that is gay or something, you know, like that, like that. Yeah, I know, right? But it's
I totally get what you mean.
Yeah, but it's like, so that is one, but I think there's more to it. I think that, like, if you identify people who are just truly incapable of being wrong, they're incapable of being challenged, they're incapable of letting anything go quietly. They always make, like, they'll destroy anyone who disagrees with them every time without question. That type of thing is a pretty good signifier. And also, like, in my opinion, people who aren't honest or straightforward about why, like, what they're asking from you. And I think that's something that's very common in abusive structures. One of the reasons why I have like a basically, I don't even want to say a script because it's not actually written out, but it's like I have this thing that I say when I'm like, hey, show's always going to be free, but if you can toss a few bucks my way, it's always appreciated. Viewer supported forever. That is because I want people to understand what am I giving to them? What are they going to get in return? And what can they expect? And the thing is that people use vague or nebulous expectations to get to entice the imagination, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Tithing was a huge part of the church. The church always found a way to find and get more money from people, whether it was through book sales, and they were never clear about it. It was always just for God. But of course, it ends up enriching a lot of the people at the top. But it was always just, we need the money for God. And sometimes they would tell you a project they were working on, but they were very, very secretive about the finances. Nobody gets to know.
Church roof.
Church, yeah.
The classic one here.
The classic, yes. Precisely. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting really how these power structures sort of just reproduce themselves. And I think it can be so difficult to spot them because I think like there's like different types of it. So I you know, a little background on me, like the school I went to, it wasn't particularly religious, but there were 2 church services a week that you had to go to.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it wasn't religious really at all. And like generally it's just sort of like, they just read a passage and it's all very simple and normal. But one time there was a woman who came in and she was making her speech, and I normally don't pay attention. I shared your habit of, looking at the window panes and counting them.
Yeah.
But something caught my ear and I was like, okay, I'm interested in this, because she started saying things that was a little bit weird to me. And the thing that really stuck in my head and still does to this day is she said, okay, doing good things but not in the name of God is like being picked up by like an extension cord, like being an extension cord plugged into itself. Like you're not doing anything. And I was like, I started laughing like quite quietly. I was like, that's hilarious. And then I left the room and someone was like, I was like, that was a bit of it. And someone was like, oh no, I thought it was pretty interesting, that like, it was entertaining. And I was like, are you insane?
Yeah.
How can you not leave this without utter disgust?
But feeling like, wait a minute, no, you shouldn't do good things for the sake of doing them. You shouldn't do them because they benefit other people. You should do it for God, which conveniently also means me, which also means the school and the church that you're in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That statement in and of itself should be such like a red flag. And I think, I don't know, maybe this is my own little like armchair psychologist theory, but I think that's part of a thing about authority and power, right? Yeah. Someone standing up on that pulpit immediately elevates their opinion beyond just like each other. Like it means that they can, whatever rubbish they say, you're going to consider it to be of a greater value, right? There isn't this equal judgment in terms of what people say.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotional manipulation that people don't like to think about, because it confronts with how easily manipulated we are in general, just how emotional creatures we are. I mean, again, my church had a giant sword on the back wall and on a big wooden cross, and it was like this giant sword, and it had like, the golden letters over it and all this stuff, and they had
way cooler than my church.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, it's like, but at the same time, it's like they're using that as a way to emotionally impose on you so that you get wrapped up in the message. But yeah. I do have to we have to wrap up now, unfortunately, because I do have another engagement.
Sorry, I've been taking up all your time.
No, it's been fantastic. I would love to keep talking. I do have a prior promise. So, if there's any other last things you want to
handle, it's the charity stream, isn't it?
What's that? Yeah, it's a charity stream over the Super Nintembos. Yeah.
I've been. Sorry, say that again.
Super Nintembos.
Super what?
Super Nintembos, as in like a non-binary. Bimbo kind of thing.
No, that's amazing. I love that. I'm glad to be included as a himbo myself. I'm nice to, normally I wouldn't be incorporating that, but it's very nice.
Braver than the troops.
But no, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great here. My girlfriend said if you don't say hi to me in the stream, I'll be very mad at you. So hello, I'm here. You probably won't have watched this bit, but that's fine.
Hi, girlfriend. Hi.
Just thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this. Sorry if I rambled on a bit much.
No apologies. You did fantastic. It was a great interview, and I apologize for being so tired myself, but I hope that I was able to answer your questions and provide interesting conversation nonetheless.
Hey, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed. This is the longest one I've done ever, pretty much. I couldn't tell how long it was at all. So it's been incredible. Can I do a quick shill? Is that allowed?
Absolutely.
I know it's a bit cringy.
Of course. It's not cringy. That's natural.
To give into my capitalist instincts. Hello, everyone. My name is Dutiful Future, you see on the sign there. If you like the words that I have said in a specific order, you can check me out, Dutiful Future, on YouTube primarily, but I also the same title on every single platform. I am amazing at SEO, so you will find me if you just search those words. And thank you so much for having me, Demon. It's been fantastic, and it's been lovely to meet all of the imps.
Yeah, absolutely. Y'all go follow Dutiful Future, and we will talk again in the future, I'm sure. All right?
I hope so. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to the person who said they liked my shirt. I appreciate it. Bye, everyone.
Bye for now.